Okay, right. So, thank you, or not. So let's get started. We are trying to talk about the power of interaction and how we see things when we do our daily work basis. Okay, so who we are? Hi, I'm Bruno. I'm currently an Agile coach at Farfetch. Okay, and
I'm Nuno Rafael, and I'm a product owner at Farfetch.
so enough presentation. We have a lot of coffee to have, and we'll get to know each other. Okay, so let's start the sprint. At the beginning, when we started like everyone else, simple steps, trying to understand what a backlog is, what a sprint is, what a story is, and on this path, we thought that all the concepts that we know so far in project management, time estimations, etc., risk management, etc., was not. We have no clear idea how we had to get agility and Scrum, right? So we start digging on what this is Agile all about. And we get to the Agile Manifesto. And we start reading and trying to understand what it's on the Agile Manifesto. And we start talk and read a lot about culture and values. And we thought that Agile was management, and we get confused, okay, at the time. And one of the main and great statements on the Agile Manifesto is on history, when somebody wanted to state, and the group said that as a group, we like this idea. And it's very clear to the participants that everything in Agile is all about mushy stuff of culture and values, and we get all this confusion in our head, okay? I thought that management was a sheet where we calculate things and manage it, right? So confused. And we get deeper. And we try to go back to the origins. And we reach Lean, okay? So when we reach Lean, we discover someone called Deming. Deming is the father of Lean manufacturing, the Toyota system in Japan. And throughout his life, he helped implement this, what we call a Japanese miracle. And at the end of his life, he all summed up as a system of profound knowledge. And we talked for the first time, we heard about a system, okay? His main idea is that everything or every problem could be solved by understanding the system and this process, and it was not a people problem. So people do mistakes because the machine was improperly set up, for instance. Just a little bit of what is standing for, okay? So, as we know, Lean is like the Bayesian stepping stone of Agile, so this is very important. For the first time, we start hearing about systems. And we go, once again, a little bit deeper. And it was systems everywhere, okay? It's a system of development, system of knowledge, system of learning, complex system, adapted system, thinking systems, everything was a system. We have a lot of understanding or trying to understand what is a system. And we start talking and everything was like, it's even more confused. Culture, system, every conversation, every blog, every article, every paper was talking about system. Does culture block the system blocks the culture. What values contributes to the system? And the system, does it work without values or not? And it was a very confusing, okay? So, a pattern was emerging in our discussions, in the early years of our discussions, okay? And basically, we start getting together cultural system. Every single time we talk about Agile, we end up saying something like cultural system. And that kind of triggered our minds to, do we have something here? Okay? So, planning, it's not planning, it's spiking, okay? We felt we were ready, so we thought, okay? And we tried to do a user story. So the flow, okay? And we try to go to where to start. And the system is not a flow, I know, just don't ask it. But to simplify the way we were trying to explain things. So one of the main aspects of a system is the flow that gets into the system, and the various agents interact so we get an output, right? So that was kind of building up something. I was not sure what. And in one great conversation that we have, he asked me, what are you thinking about? Just share your ideas, right? You remember? So, have you found a cultural flow? And that was the question, and that was what was bugging us. Do we really have a cultural flow in our systems? So culture, and we try to explain it this way, culture settles values. We don't get into much detail because we will have all day long here, okay? So I won't bother you with that. Just trying to accept the idea, okay? In any other way. So, and values can structure actually behaviors, and behaviors will trigger actions, and actions, or on the other way, patterns will emerge from actions, okay? So we thought that we have this flow of our cultural systems, right? So if we have a system, if we have a flow, why don't we work with that? So what knowledge would we have in the community to work on this flow or in this system? A lot, mainly in two areas. We are seeing keynotes, spectacular keynotes around here about culture and teams, etc. And about patterns, and about tools, and about how you do your work, and about all this stuff, right? So, but changing culture, it's a really blow-minded job, right? Because mainly it's somehow persistent. And in my opinion, this is the greatest one. It's undoubtedly an organizational effort. You cannot change the culture by yourself, and that's impossible, okay? Basically, in consequence, you need to match the strategy of a whole organization that probably just cares about money with the culture. And that's a lot of effort for us to, on a daily basis to do, okay? We should fight for it, yeah, of course. If you have the position and the power, you have the obligation and responsibility to fight for it, okay? But on a daily basis, I don't see how we can influence it, but you can change the culture on a daily basis, okay? Apply patterns, huge amount of patterns these days, but I found this problem. I love patterns, so we cut slides of why patterns it's all about, because I love patterns, I just love them. But here to try to understand why is a gap, why it's so difficult patterns to work and try to get to the next idea. So it's a huge amount of patterns these days. It's hard to find the adequate pattern because the pattern itself emerges from a context, as you see here. So if you understand the flow, the pattern does not emerge without all this flow. So every pattern has a culture, a value, and comes from a behavior and several actions or whatever, okay? So it's a combination of things, and the interpretation of these actions and this flow on a given moment or in a given context, it's what the pattern is all about, okay? Sorry. So, and if you try to apply them, it's hard to understand why it didn't work or why it did work. It's very hard to understand what kind of patterns or why it's working or not working, okay? So then we find the gap. If you look closely to the workflow or to the flow that we are presenting, there's a gap. Not a gap on the flow itself, but a gap on the stuff that we see on our community to try to deal with this tree, okay? Not a lot of people say, how do we work values? Not a lot of people say, how do we work behaviors? Behaviors a little more, okay? And actions, I don't even know if it's correct to say we need to work on actions, okay? So basically, we found a gap on how we manage these 3 stages, a gap on the community about how to manage, how well to work on these 3 stages of our process, of our cultural process, okay? So why don't you work on the values? He asked me one beautiful day, you are talking about every time values, values this, values that, values this. Well, why don't you try to work on them?
You are a Scrum Master.
Yeah, you're a PO. So basically, I take up the challenge and try to understand, yeah, okay, it's a lot of slides that I've got to cut down, but one day I say, why don't we apply constraints? Why not? It's a flow, it's a process, at least from our point of view, why don't you apply a constraint? And that's kind of counterintuitive, because if we do value values, why are you applying the constraints? Come on. I don't understand that, okay? So basically, trying to explain, I will not try to explain the theory of constraints, but adapting from that theory, basically we have here a system and 2 flows, right? And agents interacting, and several possibilities that goes into an outcome, okay? So basically, the effect that we are expecting when trying to do something on this cultural value is if you constrain the system on a flow, it will clarify everything else, because the constraint forces the system to adapt. And that adaptation is where it emerges patterns and this great stuff that we are talking about in all these conferences, right? So that's what we propose ourselves, let us say, try to do, okay? So experiments on the field already in place. And basically, we have a team, 1 year, 3 months, we have a lot of mistakes on this team. I'm seeing the PO over there. I know we have a lot of mistakes on this team. It was the first experiment. So trying to apply a constraint, and we weren't bold enough. No, just values is so difficult. So just try something a little bit softer and go in behavior. If you remember, behavior is right next on the stream, okay, on the flow. So we were not bold enough, even though we are talking about the value flow, to go there. Okay, just trying a little behavior, choose pick one. Okay, and we put a constraint on that. So basically, what we have done, we talk about on the team about collaboration and speak with them, and the team really reacts really well on this one. Okay, basically, what came up from this was a shared common goals, a boost on communication levels, and turned out to get a group of individuals work as a team, as a real team, right? And don't you think, because this is not static and I'm trying to tell you a message, this was a daily basis proposition. So basically, one of the great things that we saw on this approach of applying a theory, constraints on the field is like, we focus the Scrum Master on this, and we focus the team on this, and everything is made on this. And so the system needs to adapt to this constraint. And so the system is always thinking about collaboration and the right stuff. And so it worked pretty well, don't you think? 7 months later, okay, this is working well, so let's try to put another constraint on top of it. And yeah, we put another top, and what kind of constraints? On values this time. Yeah. So basically we choose one value from the manifesto, and the team just boosted, okay? And the team just boosted in engineering practices, in solutions. No, she stopped seeing problems and just put it solutions. And we gained a spectacular client trust on that team, okay? So basically, now we have a doubt. Was this because we have a strong collaboration and then this decision is just like stressing it up, or the other way around? So we don't know. So we try a second one. This one has 3 months. And basically, we go bolder this time, right? So we have tried to apply basically a constraint on values, on the value of customer collaboration. Everything on this team is customer collaboration. They always talk about customer. They are always thinking about the customer. No way can do anything without the customer, right? So basically, that's how basically is the outcome of that. So, but then we are not sure about certain things, and we tried to do another possibility. Why don't we start with those 2 constraints? This one experiment is we are trying to work on that one, okay, right now. So, but the major lesson, and one overwhelming lesson, is like this flow and these interactions and these constraints, just how do we see? We saw that the constraints just highlights and simplifies the system, just highlighted 2 system properties. The 2 that we are here trying to talk about. And the 2, somehow, the first keynotes just talk a lot about this. And I don't know really why, but in the field we saw that with those constraints, they were highlighting these 2, the interaction and the interaction. We never talk about, hey, let's force more releases. Hey, let's force more conversations. Hey, just do more grooming. Oh, whatever. No, we are focusing on the constraints and everything else emerges, okay? But really, really, on the field, it shows the interaction, it goes faster, and the interaction it busts the quality of interaction and talks and our way you communicate, okay? And basically we can map with the values. We can easily see that interaction between peoples is like the custom collaboration value, individuals and interactions, and from the interaction-driven values is working software and responding to change, okay? But we see this happening on the field. And finally, what is the power all about of this, okay?
You have been overwhelmed by Scrum Master, so we are confusing, let's talk about numbers. To see how this works together, interaction and interaction. So we promised an analogy. The analogy is this. Imagine you have 1,000 euros deposited on your bank. You go to your bank and they will pay you 5% of interest rate. You are lucky, no one gets that today. So, and you are even likely since the bank will pay you every month the interest. So you do the math, and at the end of 12 months, you start from 1,000 and end with 1,707. Okay? This has a formula, as you know. It calls compound interest, and the explanation is this, quite straightforward. So the future value is calculated by this one. How about the Agile? How if you map this formula to interactions and interactions? How do you feel about this? You want to give a group? How about this? It's the same formula. For feature value, you have future potential asset value. The present value is our present asset value today of our product we are trying to manage. The interest rate becomes the interaction frequency rate, measured percentage, and the period when you get your money back from the bank will become the number of iterations, number of payments. Okay? Just to note, this asset value is 10,000 euros. You want to maximize the asset over time. You have 12 months to do it. You are free to choose any number of iterations per year. Only 1 year. Okay, let's do it again. If you apply the formula, it's the same one from the interest rate. Now we call it compound knowledge. We calculated 6 scenarios. One is 4 quarters, 1 interaction per cycle. I will explain just this one and the last one. 4 quarters, this means 4 sprints, 1 year. 1 interaction per cycle means you go to your client only once per sprint. Okay? So 4 sprints, 1 interaction per sprint. This is the total time you have to interact with your client, 455 hours, and we calculate the frequency and then multiply by 100, and you have this this interaction frequency rate. Okay, so you just divide 1 by 455, multiply by 100, and you get it. Okay, so this is your present value, and this is your future value to apply the formula. If you swing the sprint length, if you go to this scenario, Pedro just told is quite crazy. You have 55 sprints.
No, it's real value.
Yeah.
Someone is doing the math, so but this is real value.
Yeah. So,
Great, thank you for confirming that.
you get the picture. Now that's plotted. You want to explain this?
Okay, basically, just because we are out of time, thank you, Rita. So basically, the idea is like when we get interaction, the formula just boosts. The red one is when we get the two together in a really high level of development, okay? So if we see the talk, the constraint that we are trying to apply, and we choose one of the interaction one and on the other one for the interaction, potentially we will have this, the red line, okay? So basically this is what is mean. We'll share with you the Excel sheet and so on. And your mobile? No. Okay, so sprint retrospective of this presentation, very quickly conclusion, just trying to sum it up. This journey of understanding the systems, agile systems, and so on, just highlighted the power of interactions, okay? And so basically our main advice for you is interact and iterate to unleash the power of interaction. Thank you very much. We'll have some time or not, Rita? No. Okay.